Welcome everybody to this press conference. The idea is that we get a statement from David, and after the statement, there's a possibility to ask some questions and get some answers, hopefully. So I'll leave it up to you, David,
All right.
to start off.
All right. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. I'm going to read a little statement here. Before I begin my remarks, please, everybody should note that some last-minute revisions were made to the ICC communication. That's what they call the complaint. In particular, the section on jurisdiction was strengthened. So please refer to the link in the press release for the final version that was sent a few minutes ago. So it has now been filed with the ICC prosecutor. I'd also like to make clear that I do not work for the Ethiopian government. I've had no coordination with the Ethiopian government or any contact with them, in fact. I don't work for any other government either. I'm just a guy who doesn't like to see people pushed around, but I'm not working for anybody else. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I filed the communication with the ICC prosecutor, and it charges Dr. Tedros Adhanom with responsibility for crimes against humanity and genocide. The copy of the communication is available online and it speaks for itself. But in short, it asserts that Dr. Tedros failed to take reasonable steps to try to prevent or stop atrocities committed by government subordinates when he was a senior Ethiopian official and TPLF executive committee member. For those of you who don't know what TPLF is, that's the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, which ruled Ethiopia in dictatorial fashion from 1991 until 2018. It's now retreated basically to rule, or it was ruling over the Tigray region, which in the last few days was invaded by federal forces, and there's now a civil war going on. So it might not be accurate to say that they're still in power. Let's say that it's contested, but anyway, that's what the TPLF is. It's important to point out that diplomatic immunity does not apply to ICC defendants, and the complaint or the communication, I'll use the two words interchangeably, proposes two jurisdictional bases on which the ICC prosecutor can act. Conventional wisdom is that the ICC has no jurisdiction over a non-signatory to the Rome Statute. But in fact, and there have been some recent precedent cases on this, the ICC can have jurisdiction under what's called the Effects Doctrine, whereby if a member state was affected or harmed in any way by the violations that took place in the non-signatory state, then the ICC can have jurisdiction. And I think it was 2018, there was a very important, legally significant case about the Rohingya expulsions from Myanmar into Bangladesh, where this principle was reaffirmed because Myanmar was not a signatory, yet the ICC found that it did have jurisdiction because Bangladesh, which suffered the inflow of all the refugees, was a signatory. So this may, in fact, represent a blurring of the lines between signatory and non-signatory states in future, which could be very important. So that's the Effects Doctrine. Then there's potentially another grounds for jurisdiction, which requires that the Ethiopian government ask the ICC prosecutor to take jurisdiction just for this specific case. That's called ad hoc consent for jurisdiction. And I'd like to take this opportunity to publicly call on Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy to make that request of the ICC prosecutor. And I'd like to ask the Ethiopian people to support me in that request, that he lodge a request formally with the ICC, asking the ICC to take jurisdiction over Dr. Tedros. I'd like to also explain that I filed the complaint in the first place because I was an early advisor to Ethiopia's opposition to the TPLF beginning in 1991 with Dr. Asrat Waldeas. And in that role, I had 27 years in which to study and observe the TPLF. And I saw, of course, that it was routinely committing genocide and atrocities, and nobody in power certainly seemed to care. And it was very frustrating. And in the course of that observation, in the latter years of the regime, I observed the rise to power and influence of Dr. Tedros. And I saw that from 2012, he actually came into power in the latter part, the end of 2012. So effectively from 2013 to 2016, he was the smiling public face of this murderous dictatorship. And as its third highest official and a member of the all-powerful TPLF Politburo or Executive Committee, he was a very important decision maker who was so much a part of the system that he must be responsible for the actions of the government's security forces. So far, he's managed to avoid liability through a combination of political patronage, personal charm, by minimizing the crimes that were committed, and the pretense that the crimes were just the growing pains of a young democracy. Some people believe that he tried to do good despite the evil all around him. But in fact, Ethiopia wasn't a young democracy. It was a homicidal, tyrannical kleptocracy. And as I said, he was too much a part of that system to pretend that he had nothing to do with all the crimes. He facilitated and protected the widespread and systematic pattern of ethnic and politically targeted crimes begun by his predecessors. So he never spoke out once, excuse me. He never spoke out, he never resigned, while his subordinates routinely murdered students, journalists, and nonviolent democracy activists, including many children. He kept silent while TPLF proxies put political prisoners in cells with wild animals. He knew that millions of people were suffering and dying because critical life-saving public goods were denied them because of their ethnicity or political affiliation. He knew that his colleagues were siphoning billions out of the economy, needed to save lives, yet he did nothing. So it was with a great deal of frustration and disappointment that I, and especially millions of Ethiopians, to whose fear, grief, and injury Tedros so contributed, watched him be honored in 2017 with his election to lead the WHO. I watched the WHO member states as well as celebrities publicly praise him. And what they were doing was sweeping his Ethiopian victims under the rug as if their pain and their lives were unimportant. I watched the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, and I wondered where was the outrage over the much greater number of Black victims for whom Tedros shares accountability. So this complaint or communication was essentially filed to establish that Ethiopian lives matter too. The complaint was filed because there has to be some kind of minimum standard of accountability in this world for crimes of this magnitude. Every day that Tedros is free, not even being investigated by the authorities, discounts his victims' humanity. It demonstrates that no such minimum standard yet exists, and this encourages other criminals in their impunity. His prosecution will help establish some minimum standard of civility that the world needs and make future criminals like him think twice. The complaint was also filed because an international criminal is running the world's most important global health agency at a time when public confidence and trust in its advice for compliance are vital. It's just too risky to have a man with a history of involvement in prior large-scale cover-ups to let someone like that be running such an important organization at a time like this. And the pandemic is a reminder that human rights abroad affect us all. If Tedros had been in jail years ago instead of at Geneva, and his job had been given to someone else who had character, a lot of the present crisis might have been averted. Lastly, I just want to say that in the 1980s, some of you may remember that there was a discovery that former UN Secretary General Kurt Waldheim had been involved with Nazi war crimes. And at the time, a lot of people thought that the UN would tighten its vetting procedures after that. The fact that Tedros slipped through the net should cause some re-examination of those policies. Anyway, I hope that today marks the beginning of justice for Tedros's victims, and that's all I can say on the subject now. The communication, as I mentioned, is available online along with the press release, and I'll be happy to take questions now. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. We will take some questions now. The idea is that we first give priority to some media to give them a chance to ask questions. There should be a button on your screen. It's called raised hands. Sometimes that's hidden under the more button. David can't see that button because he's a moderator. So for all the other people, if you just press the raise hand button, we can see here and we can request you to open your microphone and put your question forward. So please feel free to do so.
I'm going to start everybody's video so they can also raise their hand and I can see it visually that way. Okay, people are starting to appear on the screen. Okay.
Yeah, I see Casper. I'll.
Okay, Casper, go ahead.
I have one question for you, Mr. Steinman. Why is it that you, in this charge, only hold Tedros accountable and not other members of the then Ethiopian government?
Sure. About 10 days ago, the Ethiopian government issued arrest warrants for, I think it was 64 top TPLF officials. I was originally planning to include them, but the ICC will not consider jurisdiction if the national government has access and is planning itself to prosecute. So Tedros was not on that list. So I proceeded with Tedros, and for the time being, the others are left to the Ethiopian government. Now, there may yet be some other mid-level TPLF officials. I'm aware of a couple of torturers, for example, that I don't think are on that list. So they may yet in future be added.
Thanks.
Okay. Jamie, I can't see you, and the ask to unmute button's not working. So if you have any questions, please text them over to me, because I can't see or hear you. Okay. And I'm trying to start the videos of some of the other participants so I can see them.
Yeah, at the moment, anybody can unmute their microphone themselves and switch on their camera themselves.
Okay. If anybody is trying to raise their hand and I'm not responding, it's because I don't see you, in which case just send a question by text. Okay.
Okay, we're at the moment doing a question and answer. So if there's anybody got a question, if you have a problem getting your microphone working or your camera to work, try to send us a message in the chat, and then we can see if we can pick up the questions that way. Anybody with a question can unmute their microphone and ask their question.
Okay, here's, let's see. Here's one question. Why do I think the Ethiopian government did not include Dr. Tedros on the list? I'm not sure. As I mentioned, I've not had any communication with the Ethiopian government. So I've not had an opportunity to ask them. I know that they're quite unhappy with him these days. They've accused him of neglecting his WHO duties in order to lobby on behalf of Tigray. My guess is they may not have done the same extent of legal analysis yet to realize that the ICC may indeed have jurisdiction. And of course, I'll be very interested to see how Prime Minister Abiy responds to our public call for him to ask the ICC prosecutor to take jurisdiction on an ad hoc basis just over Tedros alone. Okay.
When you get a chance, my name is Danyacho Teshome. I'm in Los Angeles, California. I have a couple questions and a suggestion as well.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much for what you do. We're really indebted to you for that. First, I want to make a correction. Earlier, you said that there's a civil war going on in Ethiopia. I believe that needs to be corrected. What is going on in Ethiopia is a law enforcement operation because the TPLF murdered over 1,000 Ethiopian National Army soldiers while they were asleep. And that provoked the Ethiopian government to apprehend these murderers, the killers in the TPLF. And so that's where we are regarding the operation, the law enforcement operations going on in Ethiopia right now. And the TPLF junta is in hiding as we speak. So I just wanted to ask that you make corrections in that regard. The second question I have for you is, I have a number of videos that show the explicit terror that the TPLF has caused in the last 27 years, and particularly in the last 2 years, committing genocide in multiple places in Ethiopia, particularly against the Amhara. I have a lot of videos I can send to you, and I will send to you. My question to you is, if we prepare witnesses that would attest to the crimes that were committed against them by the TPLF, and also there are people who live in Gojam region of Ethiopia that were that were given medication of some kind of vaccination to sterilize them. A whole villages have been sterilized, and women in that area do not give birth. And so all this could be substantiated. So if you make your contact available, we'll try and help in that regard. Thank you so much.
I'll try to respond to all your points. If I forget any, don't hesitate to remind me. As far as it being a law enforcement operation, that's certainly true. Outside observers call it a civil war because of the nature of the conflict in military terms, but the two are not mutually exclusive. World War II, for example, included law enforcement operations. You had the war crimes trials at the end of the war, for example. And I am aware that the Ethiopian government does call it a law enforcement operation. Certainly have no quarrel with that. Regarding the videos, there's a Facebook page for a campaign called Operation Conscience, where the public is invited to post evidence of TPLF atrocities, and you'd be welcome to upload it there. If you want to send it to me, you could send it. I'll tell you the email address. It's, if you have witnesses, especially any that have a direct firsthand testimony, perhaps you could send a brief summary about them, and then we could evaluate whether or not they could be useful. With respect to the coercive sterilization of Amhara women, I'm aware of the video in which 13 Amhara women are interviewed, and I did mention this in the communication to the ICC. However, we do need further evidence that would demonstrate both the extent to which the coercive sterilization was carried out, and also there has to be more evidence on intentionality. So it's important to establish the intentionality, although if the extent of it is sufficiently great, there is a good chance that one could still ascribe responsibility to Tedros based on the Rome Statute article, which concerns so-called command superior liability. And in fact, that's one of the arguments that we are using, that if he's in a certain high position, he's just by law responsible for what was done under him. So we are using that argument with respect to the killings. Whether we can also use it concerning the medical malfeasance when he was health minister is still under study, but the more evidence that can be shared on that count, certainly, would be worth looking at. So thank you. Did I omit any of your questions?
No, actually, you did answer all my questions. I will leave my phone number in the private chat and my email, and I will help connect you with the people that will provide you with pertinent facts and testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, anybody else have a question? Okay, let me start with Yemezrach. Am I pronouncing your name correct? Okay, can you say something? Well, I have to ask. There we go. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. My question is, what kind of crimes are qualified enough to be brought in these international criminal courts?
Well, if you Google the Rome statute, or if you look at the complaint, you'll see that there's quite a list of them. I don't remember all of them offhand, but they certainly include murder, torture, persecution. Let me see if I can quickly find the ones that we found were relevant in this case. There's a genocide, and there's a murder, intentional infliction of conditions of life, forcible transfer of populations, unlawful imprisonment, torture, rape, got the forced sterilization of Amhara women, and enforced disappearance, intentional and severe deprivation of fundamental rights, systematic oppression, and a category called other inhumane acts. So there are others, but those are the ones that I thought were the most relevant here.
My next question is, what if there is still an ongoing crime going on in Ethiopia, in many parts of the country, after the new leader, reformer, took power? Now, we hear from many information sources, including individuals living their daily lives, how horrible those crimes are, including it targets specifically the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and ethnic Amharas. Those are particularly identified in a document in institution form. In a way, there are also other ethnic populations suffering in numerous forms. And my question is, if the crime is happening as of currently, as of now, as of we speak, as of recently, is there a possibility for ICC to call those crimes and then bring those people to justice? Do the people require to pay for lawyers, given the fact that the lawyer's cost is very expensive, and how can they afford to do that?
Okay. First, I want to reiterate that we can only make the complaint to the ICC prosecutor. We cannot control whether or not the prosecutor proceeds with an investigation and issuing an arrest warrant. But as far as making the complaint itself, in the case of the recent pogroms, I call them, or ethnic attacks, it's necessary to find out and to get some kind of evidence as to who was in effective control of the forces on the ground that were making the attacks. And I don't want to say too much in public, but we do have some information about who is pulling those strings from a very long distance, but we don't yet have strong enough evidence to move forward. So if anybody does have proof as to who was in a position of command, and who would have been able to stop that or prevent it if they wanted to. Excuse me. Then it would be good to have that information, but we don't have it yet. Okay, let's see. I think we had another question here. Sigurita. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear it, Sigurita. Good morning.
Good morning, David. This is a day to be happy, grateful to see one of the greatest human rights advocates, David Steinman, standing for the truth and justice to all, by the way, to all. He is an epitome of human rights advocates throughout the world.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome. I'll take this opportunity so much with joy and mixed feelings because of what's going on in Ethiopia. But finally, that we have reached this stage on the world stage to have our complaints to the ICC, to see the world what went on for the past 30 years, in fact. So David Steinman, he wrote a book, very credible journalist, and today he's among us to tell us what really has happened in Ethiopia during the past 30 years under the TPLF, Tigray Liberation Front, which is now known as a military junta or junta, but I would call them dictators, whom, according to some analysts who were parts of the TPLF membership, that they said, they confirmed that there were from 5 to 7 Amharas being destroyed in this of long. Therefore, today, David is among us, have his complaint against Dr. Tedros Adhanom on the issue of in 2012 to 2016 against the Amhara people. As we all know, the the number of people in Amhara region have been reduced by $2.4 million as by 2.4 million people, as confirmed by its own parliament, Ms. Samia. That was resulted from one of the arguments made that it's due to this sterilizing injection that was forced on Amhara women to reduce the population. Therefore, this is under ICC, as my friend David put it, that it is a crime. So here he's among us today to testify on truth against terrorist crime. And we take this with great pleasure and hope that we're going to have democracy in Ethiopia. So what I'm trying to say here is that it's a justified cause that we are here. As my sister Yemsrach asked earlier, yes, this happens to be done under this regime of TPLF, 30 years of dictatorship. And the areas that we see problems are reoccurring in the Amhara region, in the Oromo region, are the result of the TPLF strategy using the OLF, Shani part parts of OLF, Oromo Liberation Front, whom they're using to brutally kill and assassinate Amharas and other ethnic groups and destroy the prominent religion of Orthodox faith. The churches have been burned down, at least 55 of them in the past 2 years, and thousands of people have been killed. And then now we have TPLF has waged a war against Ethiopia, which yes.
Thank you. I think you raised enough points that I'll have trouble to remember them all. So I better let me jump in and respond here. As far as the connection between the TPLF and the OLF, it is kind of interesting that the Oromo attacks have been quieter since the war started, but there still is not dispositive evidence as to who exactly is controlling the people that are attacking the Amhara. So that still has to be further investigated. I also, I guess I should make clear, my book that you mentioned, it's a historical novel. It's not a nonfiction book, but it does serve to educate Westerners about the evils of the TPLF regime. But it does have a nonfiction afterward that I published before the pandemic, in which I did call for the TPLF and Dr. Tedros to be held accountable. So I don't want to mischaracterize the historical novel part of the book as nonfiction. Only the afterward is nonfiction. Let me take, we have some other questions here, so let me take
Can
some
I have
of
a
these.
question? Can I ask?
Okay, go ahead, Mesfin.
Yes, thank you, David. My name is Mesfin. I just joined, I was late because of work and other things. I live here in the Netherlands for the last 15 years, since 2005. I was a member of the Coalition for Unity and Democracy, Kenegit. And since then, I was, I have a lot of bad experience in the hand of the TPLF. I was in prison for more than 44 times, and I received death sentence and life sentence. So I really appreciate your effort to bring Tedros Adhanom and his colleagues to the International Criminal Court. So I'll be one of the people who can give testimony for this kind of trial or effort. So please count me. I'm willing, and I will be a part of your maybe witness team or victims testimony team. So I want to make a remark on these things. Thank you a lot for your effort. Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much, Mesfin. Okay.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Yes, can I say something?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, this is Mulukan. I really thank you for just taking this initiative. Dr. Tedros is a criminal. He is a member of the Central Committee of TPLF. TPLF is a criminal organization. And in its manifesto, it has mentioned the Amhara and the Orthodox are the enemies, and he cannot call a people enemy. It's just civilians are considered as enemies, and the Orthodox and the Amhara has been massacred for the past 30 years because of this. My uncle Ababaina Kullu has disappeared just because he wanted to protect his employees at Bahardar tannery factory textile factory. He used to be acting manager, and nobody knows where he is now. It's been like 30 years. So Tedros, he is part of the Central Committee, and he is aware, and we are not, we don't know the whereabouts of our uncle, Engineer Abebe Nakulu. And Abebe is mentioned in Amnesty International. It's already reported. So there are a lot of Amaras disappeared and kidnapped, and we don't know their whereabouts. And in a recent attack in Maikadra and in the North Ethiopian Defense Force, when the TPLF Special Force attacked the Ethiopian Defense Force and innocent Amara in Maikadra, Dr. Tedros, he forgot his position. He is working for WHO. While you're supposed to work, addressing the COVID issue, the current critical issue, he was traveling to Egypt and using his connection, he was communicating with the world leaders to hide the genocide committed against the TPLF. So ICC should consider this as a violation of code of conduct against WHO, and that's number one. And the second thing is he is trying to hide the massacre against the Amara people. So that is one thing that ICC has to consider. So regarding my uncle Abebe Nakulu, Engineer Abebe Nakulu, I'm the family member. We need to know where he is. So there are a lot of people disappeared. Example, Olamar in the Professor Asrat has established an organization called Olamara Unity Party. So member of Olamara Unity Party is about 2,000 people. Nobody knows the whereabouts of those people. I think in 1987 Ethiopian calendar, they just kidnapped them and nobody knows where they are. So a lot of people has disappeared, and he is part of the Central Committee of TPLF. So TPLF is a criminal, a terrorist organization. It has to be labeled as such. So I'm really happy that ICC is taking initiative. And if there is anything, I'm more than willing to help and support. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I'm sorry, of course, about your uncle. It's true that there are a lot of crimes that are unaccounted for. Hopefully, someday, there may be an opportunity for a more effective Truth and Reconciliation Commission to get to the bottom of it. I know that Prime Minister Abiy did already expose some of the crimes that were committed, especially when he revealed that the Liu police were putting the political prisoners in cages, with wild animals. So I think he does, have some interest in seeing the truth come out. How much can be discovered, we don't know yet. I certainly hope, that more can be found. With respect to Dr. Tedros, I'm only asserting that he's responsible for the security forces during the 4 years when he was at the very top of the government. But certainly he has already demonstrated that he supported those actions because he has gone on the record trying to what I call spin them or defend them, trying to minimize them or deny them. He certainly knew that they were going on, and he continued to try to help the government, get money. He was involved with the decisions on how the money should be spent. So his fingerprints definitely are on many of the crimes that went on in those latter years. As far as, what happened in the 1990s or, in the early 2000s with the crackdown on Kinijit, I have not included those, but hopefully the list of Tigrayans on the arrest list will include people that were responsible for those. And as I mentioned, we already have the names of some torturers who are not on any of the lists that we may yet in future include, in another complaint. I saw a question somewhere on my screen that's disappeared, but I think someone was asking why I'm doing this now, why I'm waiting, why I've waited this long to make this complaint about Tedros. Here it is. Yeah, why now? Why didn't I start earlier? So it would have built the confidence of the Ethiopian government. The simple truth is, for a long time, I believed that nobody could touch Tedros. I believed he had diplomatic immunity. I believed that the ICC did not have jurisdiction because Ethiopia is a non-signatory state. And it was only very slowly that I was able to realize that there might be some grounds on which this could be done. And it was not until 2018 that I even thought it might be, possible, especially after they had that Rohingya case that reaffirmed the Effects Doctrine precedent. But then the research and the writing of the complaint took a long time. And I also thought that with the law enforcement operation going on in Tigray right now, this was an opportune time because Abiy was as likely as he'll ever be to request the ad hoc jurisdiction, which is an important second basis for the jurisdiction. So it was just a combination of factors, needing time for the research, the preparation, and then seeing that events were sort of moving in the right direction and trying to wait until the window of opportunity was there. So it's just a combination of factors. Anybody else?
I had my hands up.
I'll tell you what,
The hands raised.
we have someone here who hasn't asked a question yet. So let me call on him first. Okay, Mula?
Yes. Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Sandman, for taking the initiative to bring this issue up in the open. I would like to thank you on the behalf of all Amharas in Ethiopia, and also specifically to my sisters who were the victim of his sterilizing project. As everybody was saying that Tedros was and is still part of the Central Committee in TPLF. As they started out their plan when they started their struggle 40 plus years ago, like Amharas and the Orthodox Christians were the target of their mobilizing strategy. And that's what they did for the last 30 years. And the ethnic cleansing, the genocide that was targeted on Amharas and Orthodox has been happening, and to this day, along with their friends, the people that the OLFites that they trained to do exact same thing to help them do their job. So my question to you is that what is the next step, and how hopeful are we to see Tedros and his likes in the court, which I pledged to be there in the front seat to see and watch him to be trialed?
With respect to the communication to the ICC, they now will evaluate it, and they will make their own internal decision. Hang on one sec. Somebody's asking how much longer we should go. Okay, sorry about that. So anyway, the prosecutor now has received the communication. They're going to evaluate it. I don't know how long it takes them to evaluate it. It's 18 or 19 pages long, and there's a lot of references in it, evidence, documentation, etc. I'm sure it's going to take them quite some time to evaluate it. We have no control over their decision whether they're going to proceed or not. If they want to proceed, they will then open a formal investigation. I think that if Prime Minister Abiy asks the ICC to take the ad hoc jurisdiction, that will increase the chances of them taking it on, because it broadens the jurisdictional grounds, which improves the chances in court. Even though Effects Doctrine is already a precedent, the broader the grounds for jurisdiction, the better. And for a high profile official like Abiy to make the request, I think would certainly help to get their attention over there. So I hope that Ethiopians will support my public call to Prime Minister Abiy, and also voice their opinion that he should do this. I think we only have 10 minutes more. So let me see if there's anybody that has not yet asked a question. And if not, then I'm going to recognize Yemesrach. Okay, go ahead, please. But please try to keep the questions short, because we don't have that much longer.
Okay, thanks again. This is a second chance. Two questions. One, is it an individual or is it a group of criminals that the complaint is targeting? That's one, because obviously one person only doesn't do all the crimes. It's a chain of criminals here and there executing that on different levels. So is it to make it more fair and appropriate, is it targeting on one individual or to the entire group involved in it, or at least as much as possible extending the scope of the criminals? That's one. And then I have another one.
All right. Right now, it's only Tedros. As I mentioned, the Ethiopian government itself has issued arrest warrants for dozens of other TPLF officials. If in future we find that there are other TPLF officials who are not on that list, who can be tied with strong evidence to the crimes, we can certainly amend the communication or put, a fresh one in. But it's important that the people at the very top be held accountable. The ones that are most responsible, at least are the best, most reasonable place to start. So for the time being, it's Tedros only. We have two other participants raise their hands, so since they haven't asked questions yet, let me get to them.
Okay.
Okay, if I can find their questions. Let's see who's got the hands raised here. Okay. Tesfaye. Okay, Tesfaye, can you hear me? Okay, Tesfaye, we can't hear you, Tesfaye. Let me, you have to unmute your microphone.
Yeah, the microphone.
Hello.
Yeah,
There
Do you
we
hear
go.
me now?
can hear you.
Yes, all right, please ask your question briefly, though.
Yes, I think my question is, as an individual or as an Ethiopian, what can we help? Want to pressure the Ethiopian government to, ask the International Criminal Court to prosecute terrorists or to help out your complaint to get attention. So as an individual, what we can do?
Well, it's a good question. I think the large political organizations can take it on themselves to organize some sort of joint approach to the government. They can simply get the heads of the various Amhara and other and Oromo, other organizations whose constituencies were affected by Tedros. They can write some type of a joint letter together to the prime minister, something like that. And people, of course, can also on social media and online post and discuss the issue, so that the government becomes aware of what the public opinion is on that subject. Okay, I think I'm going to take 2 more questions, then we'll have to wrap it up.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Who didn't get to ask a question yet? Okay, anybody else? Let's see. Oh, here's. Okay, I only see 2 people with hands up. So, Mula, ask your other question, but please make it short, and then we'll just take Yemez Rach, and then that'll be it. Okay, Mula, go ahead, please.
I will have Ms. Raj take my part. She had a question.
Okay, Yemez Rach. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mulu. I'll make it short, quick. Currently, as of now, as of we speak, there are women and children afraid for their life, hiding everywhere, especially in the currently so-called Oromia region, for the fear of ethnic cleansing. It has a very brutal form, and it's happening as of currently in the era of Abiy Ahmed, the current guy, the reformer. So crime is a crime, and criminals are criminals in the eyes of the law. So in the future, is it possible to collect evidence and bring these criminals also to ICC?
Okay. As I mentioned before, if the evidence of control over the attackers is there, then the answer is yes, it can be submitted. I would add, though, that more importantly, those communities have to urgently work on organizing their own defenses more effectively. The Amhara organizations have to unify and create an organization on the ground that's coherent and capable of action in order to make the communities. They have to identify the communities that are most at risk, and they have to strengthen on the ground their rapid response capabilities and turn them into harder targets, because it appears thus far that the attackers tend to look for more vulnerable targets. So you can't just wait on the law, but instead the communities have to do more in terms of self-defense themselves, but in coordination with the government, so you don't get a repeat of what happened in 2019 when you had that fight between the Amhara regional military forces and the federal forces. Everything should be done in a coordinated way. But those communities need more support, more international support as well, and a fundraising campaign to improve their defenses on an emergency basis. I'm afraid that's all we have time for now. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Newsport. Much appreciated, and thank you to everybody. God bless the poor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. David. Thank you. I appreciate all what you're doing for us. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
God bless you for all that you do. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I will be in touch via email with information regarding witnesses and some documentation.
Yes, that was understood. Sorry.
Okay.
No problems. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.